Hey guys, welcome to Weekly Storytime. If you like these storytime videos, give this video a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you're not already. All of those things really do help us out here on YouTube. And if you want bonus content, you want to get the podcast in video form, want to dive deeper into the subject of domestic discipline, the best way to do that is over on Patreon. So a link to our Patreon is down below if you are interested. On this week's story time, I'm going to talk about getting back into the physical aspects of discipline after an impromptu break. We haven't had the ability to use spanking in our relationship for a good 2.5 weeks. And we needed to kind of get back into that in a way that made sense. And the way we did that is we started using maintenance again. It definitely was kind of a way to kind of get back into the swing of things, offer some emotional regulation, and just kind of get back into the swing of physical discipline. The biggest concern with the physical discipline was the fact that my eardrum burst. And so we really wanted to make sure that we weren't putting any unnecessary pressure on my ear. And so we had to modify the position I was in during spanking. And so we did modify that position. Once we got back into it, we gave my ear I went through 2.5, almost 3 full weeks of absolutely no spanking whatsoever. It just wasn't a good idea. It wasn't safe at that point to put the pressure on my ear in that way. And so after that period, we felt like we could kind of start dipping our toes back into those waters a little bit. And so we modified the position to where my head was higher than my torso, where typically the position I'm in, my head is a lot further down. But we didn't want to do that because it could create more pressure on my ear to be in that position. So we modified the position. Coda also modified the intensity of the spanking. We have gotten to a point before all this happened where spankings were very intense. They were much more helpful that way. They were much more useful that way. But because it had been so long and because we had the concern of creating pressure in my ear, Coda wanted to make sure that he was kind of testing the waters and not putting too much intensity into the spanking so that we could kind of see how my ear responded, how that was all going to work. And honestly, I appreciated it because having not been spanked for that long, my pain tolerance, my ability to receive a spanking was very out of practice. And so it gave me the opportunity to practice receiving a spanking in a lower stakes environment. If we had gone back into full punishments, if we had gone back into the full intensity that we were using before, it probably would have ended in disaster. It probably would not have ended well. It would have been way too much, way too fast. And so this really was a good introduction back into that part of our dynamic. And so if you've listened to our podcast on how we structure our punishments, how we structure our maintenance and all of that, you'll know that we use a zone system where it's basically 4 zones and he spends a minute or a minute and a half, depending on if it's maintenance or punishment, in each zone. With this modified maintenance, we did not do that. We just did one side at a time, kind of like we do corrections. And he did a minute and a half on each side. But again, it was a lower intensity, so it wasn't as hard to maintain position. It didn't put as much pressure on my ear. It gave me the opportunity to practice staying in position. It gave me the opportunity to practice receiving a spanking. It definitely wasn't low intensity, but it wasn't the high intensity that we had gotten used to before. So it definitely still did its job. It definitely still stung. It was a spanking. It wasn't just, it wasn't just pretend, even though I started calling them pretend maintenance, because according to what we were doing before, it felt just very much like going through the motions. But it was what we needed at the time. And so he did 1.5 minutes on each side, and then he would do the cane and the loop that we do. And he would do 15 on each side with the cane, and then I think 20 with the loop is what he ended up settling on. I asked him to increase the number on the loop, and he never actually told me what that number was. It doesn't matter. I think it's like 20, maybe 25. I'm not sure. I don't count. I try not to count. It's not something that Coda requires of me. And so I don't bother trying to keep track, because my job in that moment is receiving the sensation and processing whatever feelings, whatever, thought processes I need to process, because we use maintenance primarily not only to affirm our roles, not only to maintain the structure of our dynamic, but we also use maintenance to maintain my emotional regulation. And by this point, that very first maintenance, it had been like 2.5, almost a full 3 weeks. I was getting really, really emotionally dysregulated, not just because of not getting a spanking, but because it felt like we had just had to abruptly pause a part of our dynamic that's a pretty big part, right? And it's not like we knew that this was coming. It was like just suddenly one day, it was gone. And so I had no emotional preparation. I had no mental preparation to know that this pause was coming. And all of a sudden, it's like, no more spanking, no more accountability, really, at least immediate accountability. Now, Coda and I did sit down. We made a game plan. We decided that he would be holding accountability. It would just be delayed accountability. And that's better than no accountability. And so it has been good from the standpoint that Coda has still offered me that accountability, but it's delayed. And so by this point, I was so emotionally dysregulated that it took a few of these maintenance sessions for me to get back into kind of the right mindset, then be able to show up in my relationship in the way that I know honors my head of household and honors who I want to be in my relationship too. We had success, and my ear had been responding really, really well. And that was the other thing about this process, is that I could stop the spanking at any point if I needed to, because of how my ear was responding. Typically, I do not stop spankings. Coda always wants me to speak up if I feel like something is happening that is dangerous, but I really don't make a habit of stopping spankings. I really don't make a habit of bringing things to his attention. And so he made sure that going into this process, that I knew that if my ear felt like it was experiencing a lot of pressure, that I would stop and I would let him know what was going on, and that we would assess if it just needed to end there or if we could continue. And so that very first spanking, I did stop it. And I was like, my ear, that's all I said was my ear. And I needed to sit up. I needed to kind of see if my ear would regulate its pressure. It was just building up a little bit of pressure. I wasn't sure where that was going. It just concerned me a little bit. And we were able to continue. We were able to finish that process. And that happened the first few times. But by the second week that we started using maintenance again, my ear had been doing great. And so I asked Coda, I was like, I feel like we're gearing up towards reintroducing spanking in the way that it was before. reintroducing punishments, reintroducing corrections, all of the things. And so I asked him if we could do more maintenance in order to start to build up my tolerance for the sensation again. I asked him if he would consider being a little bit more intense, because obviously when we go into the punishments, they are going to be intense. And so I wanted to practice receiving more intensity just to make sure that my ear would be okay with that, and to build up my tolerance again, because it is concerning when you haven't had those sensations in a while. And we had grown and built up to a point where the spankings were so intense that it was concerning to me to go back into that without any type of maybe conditioning, so to speak. And so I asked him if we could do more maintenance that week. And so we ended up doing maintenance 3 days in a row, where he did build up the intensity through the process. And we went back to our position that we were using before. So my head being further down, and my ear did great. We can kind of really move forward in the way that we want to. The most disappointing thing about getting sick when I did, and how it paused the discipline aspect of our dynamic, is because we had just come out of boot camp and we had so much momentum. And I'm really hoping that we can kind of pick up where we left off and continue to have that momentum. But it is hard because now we're going on 4 weeks of just not having that aspect intact. I am really excited about getting back into the full swing of our dynamic. I'm really excited about feeling better and feeling more like myself. And so anyway, I will talk to you guys later. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give the video a like. Subscribe if you're not already. We are really hoping to hit 2,000 subscribers very, very soon. So it would really help out the channel if you would subscribe. If you enjoy our content and you're not already, please do. And we will talk to you guys next time.